Hello, sweet souls, and welcome to the We Are the Medicine podcast. I am your host, Dania Anastasia. I am a spiritual being having a human experience as a planter of seeds, alternative medicine practitioner, and trail guide on the path of life. We Are the Medicine is an exploration of the human experience through our stories. Our stories heal, our stories are our medicine, our experiences are our medicine. This is how we learn, grow, inspire, expand, and connect. My hope is that you will listen for inspiration and deeper understanding of how your individual life plays a role in that of the collective. I also hope to engage you, the listener, in conversations around your own dinner tables, in cafes and boardrooms, so that we may all begin to hold space for one another. Welcome to the show.
Hello, and welcome to the We Are the Medicine podcast. Today, I am deeply honored and super excited that I get to have this conversation with my mentor, Melanie Madhuri Phillips. Melanie has been my mentor for over a year now, and I cannot sing her praises high enough. Melanie empowers conscious women to free themselves from patterns of thinking and believing that create suffering in their lives. This expanded consciousness allows her clients to live an authentic, self-expressed life that is aligned with their true nature. Melanie Phillips is a certified theta healer, a best-selling author, certified clinical Ayurvedic specialist, Access Consciousness Bars practitioner, Akashic Records consultant, Reiki master, yoga teacher trainer, a bioenergy healer and trainer, and a vision quest protector. Having walked a real and vivid healing path through chronic illness and extraordinary loss, Melanie embraces the philosophy that we can all reemerge from darkness and create a life of vitality, joy, and abundance, no matter what we have lived. Melanie has been teaching and supporting others in their healing since 2000 and continues to lead international retreats, workshops, and trainings. Her Unleashed mentorship program catapults women back into their powerful connection with the divine so they can thrive and live as an authentic expression of their true nature and purpose. Welcome, Melanie.
Thank you so much. So delighted to be here with you.
So I typically just kind of launch right in and having you spill your story to me. But today we're going to start with a couple fun questions because I think Melanie's real middle name is Fun and Adventure. If you know anything about her, she's all about the fun of life and bringing that to the forefront of everything that she does. So I'm going to ask you two questions, and it's just some fun. If you were a tree, which one would you be and why?
Oh my goodness. If I was a tree, I'm having all these flashes of the little Charlie Brown Christmas tree, of like a weeping willow, of a big cedar tree. They're all like, oh my God, I have to choose right now. One. You know what? I would probably say a cedar tree. I live in Squamish in British Columbia, Canada, and we have some really exquisite, ancient, humongous cedar trees, and they're just so powerful and elegant and strong, and the smell is divine as well. So
yes, very nice. Okay. And for the listeners at home, wherever you are, if you're not driving a car, I encourage you to maybe close your eyes for this next one. So Melanie, can you describe the color blue to someone who cannot see it?
I doubt it, but I'll try.
Yes, you can.
Can I describe the color blue? Is this a blind person that's never seen color?
Yeah.
Is this an alien? Okay.
Alien, blind person, infant, whoever. What would you say?
I would say wow, I notice how many questions I have from your questions. I'm like, but what shade of blue? So I'm looking right now, turquoise is one of my favorite colors. I'm looking at a turquoise cabinet that I have in my home. I would say blue is like the breeze that nips at your cheeks, but in a refreshing, rejuvenating way in the middle of winter. And it crisps you up. It makes you wake up and be alive a little bit more. It makes you awaken to the freshness and to the exuberance of life.
I can see blue. Thank you for that.
This is hard. Oh my goodness. As long as you don't ask me any math questions, I think we'll be okay.
Oh,
No
dude,
mathematics.
no. Math that's why I took art in school, because I just couldn't wrap my head around it. Yeah, math is hard for me. So let's get into, however you want to start, wherever you want to start, a little bit about your life story and how you have arrived in the space that you are today.
Thank you. Well, I have so many stories. There's been definitely a trajectory, and gosh, life feels long. People always say life's short, but sometimes it feels so long. And I feel like there's been so many iterations of who I've been, even in this one body, in this one life. But I think some of the highlights or the major initiations that I've been through have been through a autoimmune condition that lasted almost a decade. And that was really what catapulted me into becoming an Ayurvedic practitioner, because I was on a trip to India. There was a period of about 12 years. I was back and forth to India a lot, and I was living in an ashram there and part of this spiritual organization. And on one of those trips, I got very, very sick. And then I left the ashram and I continued to travel around Asia by myself for about 8 or 9 months after that. And I didn't realize how unwell I was. I was out of the context of my day-to-day life. So, food's different, travel's different. I kept getting food poisoning in every country that I went to. Like, my immune system was really down. And when I got back to Canada, I was like, there's something wrong. Like, I had been a trained dancer and could dance 8 hours a day. And by the time I got back from Asia, I couldn't walk up a flight of stairs without feeling winded and exhausted. So I knew inside of my body and self that something was off. And I went to the doctor, who sent me eventually to a foreign disease specialist. These take months, right, to get into these people, these specialists. I had to drive a few hours away from the town I lived in. And I was excited to think, okay, great, I'm going to go in there. The specialist is going to tell me, here's what's wrong with you. Here's how we fix it. I go in, and literally my appointment was 3 minutes long. The doctor walked in, he looked at a piece of paper. He looked at the results, my tests, and he looked at me, he said, oh, there's nothing wrong with you. And it was devastating, because I was young, younger than I am now anyway. And I thought, I can't live my life like this. Like, I have zero energy. And after that, and this was, many years ago, when things weren't as popular, even the internet, like, there wasn't as much information that I was plugged into anyway, or resources. I didn't have any financial resources. So the kind of tenacious part of me was very determined to figure it out, though. And I had known about Ayurvedic medicine, and I thought, well, I'm going to go and study Ayurveda. So I registered for a 3-year long program in Ayurvedic studies, and became a clinical Ayurvedic specialist, essentially selfishly to heal myself. And Ayurveda, there's some things where and I've had clients come and in a week, their symptoms have been eradicated and never return. For me, it was a slow burn. It was a longer, slower process. But I did notice that it was helping me. The other thing that helped me was getting divorced. That really allowed me to heal in a great way. Like literally, as soon as my ex-husband left our apartment, I started to get energy back, started to feel better. Interestingly enough, I'm not blaming him, but I'm just seeing the correlations between our emotional and mental and energetic lives and our physical reality.
Right.
So I began to heal, but I knew that there was more, like there was a piece of the puzzle that was missing. And so that's where energy healing and energy medicine came in for me, and looking more deeply into the psycho-emotional component of disease, of people's diseases, of my own, of looking underneath, like, what is this autoimmune condition that the doctors can't figure out what it is? Like, why is this going on? And that for me was a sort of in-depth, thorough excavation of deeper energetic, ancestral, and even lifetimes of patterning. In yoga, we call it samskaras, right? These impressions that become our energetic makeup and essentially become our nervous system, or the representation. Our nervous system represents how we are wired psycho-emotionally and even karmically, if you will. So that was a huge shift in my healing, and started to feel better. And then fast forward some years later, I had written my first book. Things were wonderful. I was in a relationship with the love of my life, and quite suddenly and quite unpredictably, as in no signs, my partner killed himself. And that experience obviously brought me to my knees. I was in shock. This was someone that did not have mental illness. This was someone who was the life of every party, who was Mr. Positive. And then there was a shadow that I couldn't see in that. Someone who lived to such high expectations of themselves, to such high expectations of perfectionism inside themselves, that I can only fathom that was part of the demise of essentially not feeling enough. And I see this as really the disease of our time, and a lot more mild ways, that this not enoughness, this I'm not enough, I don't feel enough, this comparison to other people, to other people's lives, to seeing, I'm at a certain age, where should I be in my life at this age? How is it supposed to look? There's all of these illusions that we've been fed and brainwashed into, essentially, that are so incongruent with just living a life and letting a life be how it is. So that experience of his suicide was a catalyst for even deeper healing. And I decided after that I was going to live a great life, and that I would support other people to live a great life. And I was already doing that. I had been a yoga teacher for years, an Ayurvedic practitioner. I had been working in energy healing and supporting people. But my why, my passion for, like you say, for fun, for adventure, was highlighted. And it became a conscious choice at that time of, like, I know what suffering is. I know what grief is. I know how hard it can be to not want to be on this planet anymore, personally. Because after his death, I got to that place. I'm like, well, if he's not here, what's the point? What's the bloody point of all this anyway? So there was a lot that I had to heal and clear and navigate at that time. That was very painful. I felt very alone. I felt very isolated in my grieving. I felt like there was nobody there for me. And it also made me realize that our inner world, our inner narrative, the stories, the mind chatter, what is going on inside is our reality. And that if we wait for the external to be the way we want it to be or think it should be or improve, we're going to be on the roller coaster ride of when something good happens, we feel good. When something quote unquote bad happens, we feel bad. And I knew that that wasn't freedom. And I was and am devoted to liberation, to freedom, to moksha. And that's really what I feel if I have to give myself a purpose, because we do, right? We all get to choose our own purpose. That's what I'm here to do, is to help support people who are interested in being liberated from their own suffering. It's not as hard as we've been taught.
It can seem very unlike anything that we've ever been exposed to before, this kind of healing, this kind of in-depth work. And I think, as you just said, mainly because we've never really even talked about it. We've just, this is our life, this is your reality, this is, that's reality, time to face reality. And I think I'm seeing more and more in my own sphere of people who are not convinced that they can change anything in their lives, but they're interested in knowing how people are doing it, and I think that, hands down, it's a conditioning that we've just been bought, or we've been sold, and we've bought it from a very young age. So we just don't question it. We just go to work, we live our life, we have our families, we do our things, and crappy things happen. And I do find, though, that there are so many gifts in all of the heavy stuff that gets sent our way. And thanks to you, part of my purpose is to help people find those gifts in those tight, constricted places. I was just on the phone with a client before this, and resistance has been her major blockage. And I said, just pretend you're in a boat and the other person's in the back of the boat and they're rowing upstream and you're trying to row downstream. It's like, if you just let the oars go, like, you don't have to struggle anymore, and you can guide them to flow with the current if that feels good for them, or just put their oars in the boat with you and just kind of ride it out together. And even that little bit of an analogy was kind of like, oh, huh. I just think there's so much that we can provide for people that they just don't have the tools to work with. So how do you currently find joy, ease, and love in your life on a daily basis?
Well, I don't think we find it. I think we be it.
Oh, please tell me more.
And this comes back to the idea of things not being outside of ourselves. So yes, I can find joy and love in rock climbing and hiking in the mountains and skiing. Those things, I connect with who I am in those places in a really apparent, bright way. But if we think that there's something outside that brings us the love, that brings us the joy, we will forever be in that pattern. And then when that thing is no longer in that same form or is taken away, we suffer. So I'm more interested in cultivating that joy, that love inside. It doesn't mean that I don't want, great things on the external, but I'm not under the illusion that that is what is bringing me the thing. So if I'm under the illusion that my partner is what makes me feel lovable, that's too much pressure on him and too much pressure on the relationship. And I'm actually the one that is responsible for my own loving. Does that make sense? I know I didn't answer your question.
No, it's perfect.
Directly, but
it makes perfect sense. And that is, I think, one of the hardest, most interesting concepts that has been brought to my adult life, because that is a completely foreign concept to me up until a couple of years ago. And it's so amazing when I look back at the relationships that I've had and, wallowed in why they may have failed or gone the wrong way. Specifically, just my divorce last year. At first, I get stuck. We get stuck in the blame game or the would have, could have, should have. And then when you start to take responsibility for your part in whatever happened, you realize that, yeah, the pressure that I had put on my husband was just immense because he had his own stuff. So how in the world is he going to work on his own stuff when I just keep piling mine on top of him and expecting all of that validation, all of that love to come from him? And I think it was a struggle for me to see how I needed to love myself, because I was taught that was selfish.
that's right. And we've been taught that especially romantic love is something we get outside from somebody else.
Yeah, and I'm working on the whole concept of what love really is. It's not an action, it's a way of being. It's a vibration that you feel in your body when you enter any situation. And that's how I have been able to transmute suffering, even on small little, piddly things that would have derailed me a few years ago. If I can always come from that center, that place of love, and see through the lens of love, as opposed to put on top of an already difficult situation my expectations and my perceptions of what it could or should be, I can just see it for what it is. And then that opens up, like, the other person or the other situation. So many more possibilities open up because of that. And just the phrase of being love as opposed to doing love is a pretty foreign concept to most people.
Yeah, it's almost the flip side of everything we've been taught. Like everything's turned upside down.
Yes. And speaking of turning everything upside down, I don't know if you'd had a chance at all to listen to any of the shows that I pre-recorded, but one of my first podcasts was basically an introduction, my story, who I am and how I got to this place, kind of like what I've asked you. And I had written this probably middle of the summer of last year, kind of when I was knee deep in everything. And I was coming from the heart. I was being honest. I was being completely vulnerable, but I was way over explaining. I was way getting too many details into the heaviness and all the drudgery and all the challenges and all the struggles. And I just listened to it for the first time again yesterday. And I stopped it halfway through. I was like, oh my God, this person, she's depressed. Like, this is heavy. This is not healthy. And so I did just that. I literally, I played a little bit and I stopped and I completely flipped the whole thing around to what the gift was in that situation, as opposed to even bringing up the hard stuff that I had to suffer through and all those things, because that's just a part of our life. But it's how you perceive it, what you want to make it mean. And you were the one that taught me that. I remember saying a few things. You're like, so what are you making that mean though? I'm like, what do you mean? You can make it mean anything you want, in the premise of life is neutral. you can make it a good thing or a bad thing depending on how you look at it.
That's
And
right.
that is part of your reality.
Yeah, and the conditioning is so strong around what is good and what is bad, what is right, what is wrong, that it's very difficult to step out of that programming to say, oh, you mean I have a choice in how I perceive this, think about this, feel about this? Yes, yes, you do. Even the most horrendous of experiences, you have a choice to perceive it. And we will perceive from the level of consciousness that we are in. And so the work, if people choose, is to recognize where they're coming from. What level of consciousness am I perceiving from? Am I perceiving from victim consciousness? Am I perceiving from that sort of martyrdom? Or am I perceiving from low self-worth consciousness? Because the same incident or circumstance looks very different from, on the ground in it to 50,000 miles above the earth looking down on it. It's the same situation, but where are you looking from? Where are you perceiving from? It makes literally the world of difference.
It does. And if you are familiar with the laws of the universe, what you focus on, you attract, right? And so as I'm reading this, I think my initial intention of ever writing my story and being vulnerable and putting it out there was, yeah, look at me, look at how vulnerable I am, and I can expose my underbelly to everybody. And when at the same time, I was stuck in the negative aspect, the negative perception of all of those situations. And I think that's probably why I feel like I'm in cloud 9 today, because when I rewrote it and I read it out loud, I was just, the weight of all of that burden, of all of that suffering just kind of vanished, just completely vanished. I'm like, oh my God, I can choose to see it a completely different way. And I like that better way. It's a better feeling story. Why wouldn't you want to have a better feeling story about your life? Right?
Yeah. Yeah. And it doesn't discount the struggles, the trauma,
No.
the difficulties that you've been through. It means that you don't have to live there anymore.
Right. And it doesn't have to drive your choices. It doesn't have to drive how you feel all day. So one of the last couple things I wanted to ask you, one of my first podcast episode was on 10 guideposts for healthy long life, based on, of course, my experiences and what I've found to be true. And one of those was cultivating your favorites. And by that, I mean, I just swoon over lemon zest. And when I zest a lime, like the scent is intoxicating to me. Like I could zest limes all day long. I could just sit there and zest them, right?
That's hilarious.
I know. And I didn't realize how strong of a scent that was for me. Cilantro is another one. So I'm asking you, either through your senses or things that you've experienced, can you give me a couple of your favorite things in this world?
No, we were talking about scents. Rose is one that I absolutely adore. Anything rose, I'll eat. My friend made me this powdered rose, and I think she said it was edible. Anyway, I've been eating it. I'm pretty sure I should double check on that. Rose water, rose spray. The smell of rose essential oil is so divine to me, and I just absolutely love that. Nature, mountains and ocean are such loves of mine, and being in places where other humans can't easily access is also quite thrilling to me, is quite satisfying to, hike into somewhere that is less accessible, to rock climb up something. These to me are things that I just delight in this world with all of my senses.
Awesome. I don't know if you knew this or not, but I used to rock climb myself back in the day, long day ago.
So good, so fun.
It was. It's one of those activities that really pushes every part of your being to its limit. It pushes your mental capacity, it pushes your physical capacity. It yeah. I remember my guide, my boyfriend at the time, he had taken me up, and there were several times where I'm like, hell no, I lay me down, lay me down. I can't do this. He's like, no, breathe. You can do this. And when you do it and you're standing at the top, whew, such a rush of satisfaction and accomplishment for yourself, because no one does it for you, right?
Yeah, and just to do something that, you know, moments or minutes before you didn't think was possible, and then to prove to yourself that, oh, I could do that. Yeah, and climbing isn't something that I've done my whole life. I came to this like in my 40s. So this is something that it's not like, oh, it's too old to start. Like, no, you can start anytime. This was part of my, after my partner's death, part of my, you know, resurrection of like, I want to have fun. I want to do fun things. I want to really be in life and really live life and face my inner demons, and something that I continue and face with through climbing, through mountaineering, through, you know, backcountry skiing, is my fitness level. Because after having an autoimmune condition for nearly a decade, I had a lot of stories that were connected to my physical abilities, that I couldn't do a lot of things, especially, you know, cardio or athletic things. So every time I go out is my spiritual practice. It's my edge to lean into, to look at like the demons that arise of feeling like I won't be able to do it, or I won't have the energy, and to see. And I'm really now starting to get like, it's seeping into my cells that I'm stronger than I think. You know, and I take care of myself. I make sure that my, you know, my sleep and my eating, that I really honor and take care of my body. And I'm not who I was when I had that autoimmune condition. And so I have a lot of understanding, compassion for people that, which is pretty much the human condition, that find it difficult to perceive themselves in a new light. But unless we do things differently, we will never get a different result. And so we have to go outside of the comfort zones to experience a different version of ourselves. And there's no other way. We can't just keep living the same life and hoping something will be different.
Right. Now, there has to be action. There has to be action to do it. And this is again some of the things that the clients that I see, they're just so comfortable. They're content. And one of the women I spoke with this week said, there's a level of pain, there's a level of sick and tiredness of a situation, of a condition, that until you're pushed to that limit, most people won't break themselves free of it. That's because right. They've already accepted that this is my fate, that this is this is how it is.
Yeah, this is who I am.
This is who I am. So
this is how life is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, my question is like, do you want to be most people?
Right. And then most people, I mean, you know, the majority of humans, I mean, this is why the light workers are kind of scattered about, right? Like little twinkling lights throughout the universe, to be in the midst of those who need the support the most, who need a flashlight held for them in their darkest moments. So I know you have a couple programs coming up, and you also have a retreat in Costa Rica coming up, one in November, which I think is probably closed by now. which is the one I was going to go to, but you've got one in December. Do you want to talk a little bit about that retreat before we go?
Sure. Yeah. I've got my two programs, the Costa Rica retreat, which is I'm running with my partner, and he is a professional adventure racer. And what we've done is create a week with people to do the deep inner work, but also get to do the somatic reprinting or reprogramming that happens when we go outside of what is comfortable. And everyone is different. So it's like there's no one is forced to do anything, but participants will have the opportunity to go whitewater rafting, to rappel down waterfalls, to climb ancient trees with harness and helmet on, and to go on hikes in the jungle. And we're going to mirror the outer with the inner. So we've got 4 nights at Chakra Eco Lodge, and we've got a couple of nights at a beach resort with sort of the best of both worlds. And it's really for people who are wanting to do the deeper healing inside themselves. I'm going to be also offering energetic healings throughout that week. It's going to be a holistic approach, which is the work I do is a holistic approach in one of the most beautiful places in the world, in Costa Rica. So that's coming up in December. And then my Unleashed mentorship is coming up in July as well, for souls who are ready to do everything that we've been speaking about today, Dee, and what I've seen, the tremendous quantum leaps that you've taken in your life, both inner and outer. This podcast being a beautiful expression of that, to really learn how to liberate themselves out of the suffering or out of the hell that seems so real.
Thank you. And I feel like I have to say, if I can do it, everybody can do it. Because I am a stubborn German, and I don't take too kindly to people, messing with my stuff and getting in there. And so, yeah, it's been a complete 180 for me. So your information will be in the information of the podcast, so that people can find your link. But it's also at, can you read off your website for them real quick?
Yeah, MadhuriMethod.com. It's spelled MADHURI method.com, MadhuriMethod.com. They can find me, and people can reach out to me there or via social media.
Okay. So the last silly, fun question, and I promise it's not going to make you think too hard. Do you eat or drink soup?
Why? Well, I
don't know. It's just a silly question.
I think that depends. Because if I'm using a spoon, I'm eating it. If I'm drinking it out of a cup, like when I'm camping, then I'm drinking it. So I think it depends on the form in which you are consuming the item.
And it would also, I guess, depend on if it's just like a puree tomato or like a hearty beef vegetable, right?
That's true, right? So one would require a spoon. Like if there's big chunks of things, you're going to have to eat that more. Or if it's liquid, if it's just, These are very, very deep questions.
Oh, thank you for playing my game. Is there anything else that you'd like the listeners to know today?
I just want everyone to know that it's possible to change, it's possible to heal, it's possible to transform, that no matter what you've been through and no matter how hard things might seem currently in your life, it's possible to live life differently.
Yeah. Amen. Well, thank you. Thank you very much for your time and your presence.
Thank you so much for having me here. It's been such a gift. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And that wraps up another episode of We Are the Medicine podcast. Wanted to take a moment to thank you and to let you know that I am grateful and I appreciate you so much. I see you, I hear you, I do understand. If you feel called, subscribe to my channel, like, share, comment with it, and check out my website for future happenings, daniaanastasia.com. That's all for now. I love you so much. It's crazy.